At Mom's funeral, my sister came up to me. "Mom left everything to me. Here's the will, signed yesterday." The notary nodded. I pulled out an envelope that Mom gave me 10 years ago and told me to open only after her death. When the notary saw the date, he started packing his things. "I'm glad you're here with me. Please." For 52 years, I believed her. I grew up in a modest 2-story house in Portland, Oregon, the kind of place where neighbors knew your name and the mailman asked about your kids. My father passed when I was 23, leaving Mom to raise me and my younger sister Linda on her own. She worked double shifts at the hospital, came home smelling of antiseptic and exhaustion, and still managed to help us with homework. I watched her sacrifice everything for us, and I swore I would never let her down. I became a civil engineer, married my college sweetheart Sarah, and we had 2 boys who grew into fine young men. Every Sunday, I drove across town to have dinner with Mom. We would sit in her kitchen, the same one where she taught me to make pancakes, and talk about everything and nothing. She would ask about my projects at work, about the boys, about Sarah's garden. I would fix whatever needed fixing around her house, a leaky faucet, a creaky step, a stubborn window. It was our ritual, our unspoken contract of love. Linda took a different path. She moved to Seattle after high school, married a man named Craig, who sold insurance and wore suits that cost more than my monthly mortgage payment. She visited Mom maybe twice a year, always with expensive gifts and empty promises to call more often. Mom never complained, but I saw the way her eyes dimmed when Linda cancelled another visit at the last minute. When Mom was diagnosed with early-stage dementia 3 years ago, I was the one who found the specialists. I was the one who interviewed caregivers, who modified her bathroom for safety, who sat with her through the frightening nights when she forgot where she was. Linda sent checks. She said it was her way of helping, that her job was too demanding for her to be there in person. I cashed the checks and used them for Mom's care, and I told myself that at least she was contributing something. 6 months before Mom died, something changed. Linda started visiting more frequently. She would show up unannounced, sometimes staying for entire weekends. At first I was grateful. Maybe she finally understood what we were losing. Maybe she wanted to make up for lost time. But then I noticed the way she would close the door to Mom's study when I arrived. The way she would end phone calls abruptly when I walked into the room. The way Mom seemed confused after Linda's visits, more confused than usual. One Sunday, I arrived for our regular dinner and found Mom sitting alone in the dark living room. The caregiver said Linda had been there all afternoon, that they had been in the study together for hours. When I asked Mom what they talked about, she looked at me with those cloudy blue eyes and said, "She brought papers, Danny. So many papers, I don't remember what I signed." That was the first time I felt real fear. I tried to ask Linda about it, but she deflected with practiced ease. "Just some insurance forms," she said. "Nothing you need to worry about. I'm helping Mom get her affairs in order, that's all." She smiled at me. And it was the same smile she used when we were kids, and she had broken something of mine and was about to blame the dog. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe that my sister, my only sibling, would never betray our mother. But a voice in my head whispered that I was being naive. That same voice reminded me of a conversation I had with Mom 10 years earlier, before the dementia, before any of this. It was a cold January evening, and Mom had asked me to come over alone. She seemed nervous, which was unlike her. She handed me a sealed envelope, thick and heavy, and told me to put it somewhere safe. "Don't open it until I'm gone," she said. "Promise me, Daniel, no matter what happens, no matter what anyone tells you, don't open it until I'm gone, and when you do, you'll understand everything." I promised. I put the envelope in my safe deposit box at the bank and tried to forget about it. Life got busy. The envelope became just another item on the list of things I would deal with later. Now, standing in Mom's dark living room, watching her struggle to remember what she had signed, I thought about that envelope for the first time in years. What had Mom seen coming? What had she wanted me to understand? The funeral was on a grey Tuesday morning. The church was filled with Mum's friends, neighbours, former colleagues from the hospital. Sarah held my hand as the minister spoke about grace and mercy and the promise of reunion. I barely heard the words. I was watching Linda in the front pew, dabbing at her eyes with a lace handkerchief, playing the part of the grieving daughter with Oscar-worthy precision. After the service, we gathered at Mom's house. People brought casseroles and flowers and memories. I shook hands and accepted condolences and felt like I was moving through water. Then I saw Linda across the room, talking to a man in an expensive grey suit. He had a briefcase, and he was nodding at everything she said. She saw me watching and walked over, the man following close behind. "Daniel," she said, her voice sweet as antifreeze. "This is Howard Prescott. He's a notary public. He handled some of Mum's final paperwork." The man extended his hand. His grip was soft, his smile softer. "My condolences for your loss. There's something we need to discuss," Linda continued. "About Mom's estate." She reached into her purse and pulled out a document. Legal paper, crisp and official, with Mom's signature at the bottom. I recognized the handwriting, the slight tremor that had developed in her final years. "Mom left everything to me," Linda said. "The house, the investments, everything. This is her last will and testament, signed and notarized yesterday. Yesterday. Mom had died 3 days ago. I stared at the signature, then at the date. That's not possible." Howard Prescott cleared his throat. "I can assure you everything is in order. I witnessed Mrs. Carter sign this document myself." "She was in a coma," I said. "She was in a coma for her last week. She couldn't have signed anything." Linda's smile didn't waver. She had a lucid moment. "Howard can confirm it. These things happen with dementia patients. A brief window of clarity." I looked at the notary, at his expensive suit and his soft hands and his lying eyes. He nodded, his face arranged in professional sympathy. It was remarkable, really. She knew exactly what she wanted. The envelope. The envelope in my safe deposit box, waiting for 10 years. Mum's words echoed in my mind. "When you do, you'll understand everything." "I need some air," I said. I walked out of that house, past the mourners and the casseroles and the flowers, and I drove straight to my bank. The clerk looked surprised to see me. I hadn't opened that safe deposit box in years. But I signed the forms and waited while she retrieved the box and carried it to a private room. The envelope was exactly where I had left it. Thick, heavy, sealed with Mum's careful hand. I broke the seal. Inside I found a document, a last will and testament dated 10 years ago, notarized and witnessed by a different notary entirely. It divided Mum's estate equally between me and Linda. There was also a letter in Mum's handwriting, clear and steady, written before the dementia took hold. "My dear Daniel," it began. "If you're reading this, then I was right to be worried. I pray I was wrong, but I know my daughter. I've seen the way she looks at what I have, and I've seen the way she looks at you. She's always been jealous of our closeness. I fear she may try to take what isn't rightfully hers when I'm gone. This will is my true intention, witnessed and legal. Whatever she shows you, whatever she claims, this is the truth. I'm sorry to put this burden on you, but you're the only one I can trust. Be strong, my son. Do what's right." I read the letter twice. Then I read it again. My hands were shaking, but not with grief. The date on my will was 10 years earlier than the date on Linda's. In any court, my document would take precedence, unless the later one was legitimate. And I knew, with absolute certainty, that it was not. Mum could not have signed anything in her final days. She was unconscious, unreachable, already gone in every way that mattered. My sister had forged our mother's signature. The notary had witnessed a fraud. I put the documents back in the envelope and drove home. Sarah was waiting for me, worried. I showed her everything. She read the letter, and I watched her face move through shock to anger to something cold and determined. "What are you going to do?" she asked. I looked at my mother's handwriting, at the love and the fear in every careful word. I'm going to do what's right, I said. The next 3 days were the longest of my life. I called in sick to work, something I had not done in 15 years. Sarah took over the household, fielding phone calls from well-meaning friends, keeping the boys informed without alarming them. I sat in my home office with the door closed, staring at the 2 documents spread across my desk. Mom's true will, 10 years old, and the photograph I had taken of Linda's forgery before I left the funeral gathering. The evidence was damning. Mom's signature on Linda's document was shaky but legible, a reasonable facsimile of her late-stage handwriting. But I had seen her in that final week. I had held her hand as the machines breathed for her. She could not have held a pen, let alone signed her name. The notary, Howard Prescott, had committed perjury. Linda had committed fraud. Together they were trying to steal my inheritance. But what did that inheritance even mean to me? The house was worth maybe $400,000 in the current market. Mum's investments totaled another $200,000, carefully accumulated over decades of frugal living. It was not a fortune. It was not worth destroying what remained of my family. Except it was not about the money. It was about the betrayal. It was about standing in that church and watching Linda weep crocodile tears while she plotted to rob our mother's memory. It was about the look on Howard Prescott's face, so practiced and so false as he swore to a lie. And underneath all of that, it was about Mom. Her letter had asked me to be strong, to do what was right. She had seen this coming a decade before it happened, and she had trusted me to stop it. How could I do anything else? On the morning of the 4th day, I drove to the office of Martin Chen, an estate attorney I had known for 20 years. We had worked together on several construction projects, and I trusted his judgment. I showed him both documents and watched his eyebrows climb toward his hairline. The date on your mother's will makes it the legally operative document, he said, but your sister will challenge it. She'll claim it was superseded by the later one. The later one is a forgery. You believe that. Proving it is another matter. My mother was in a coma. She couldn't have signed anything. Martin leaned back in his chair, tapping a pen against his desk. Medical records will help. If we can show she was incapacitated on the date of the alleged signing, we have a strong case for fraud. We'll also want to investigate this notary. If he has a history of questionable practices, that supports our position. What are the risks? If you lose, you get nothing. Your sister's will stands, and you've spent a considerable amount on legal fees. You've also destroyed any remaining relationship with your only sibling. I thought about Linda's smile at the funeral, the way she had closed the door to Mom's study. The confusion in Mom's eyes when she said, "She brought papers, Danny, so many papers. That relationship is already destroyed," I said. Martin nodded slowly. Then we proceed. I'll file a challenge to the probate and request an injunction to freeze the estate until the matter is resolved. I'll need your mother's medical records, and I'll need you to think about any other evidence that might support the claim of fraud. What kind of evidence? Witnesses who saw your sister pressuring your mother. Financial records showing unusual activity in your mother's accounts. Anything that establishes a pattern of exploitation. I thought about the last 6 months. Linda's sudden interest in visiting, the closed doors, the whispered phone calls. Had there been signs I missed? Had there been chances to intervene that I let slip away? The guilt was a physical weight on my chest. I should have asked more questions. I should have been more vigilant. I should have protected Mom from her own daughter. But guilt would not fix this. Only action would. I spent the next week gathering evidence. I requested Mom's medical records from the hospital and the hospice facility. I contacted her primary care physician and asked for a statement about her cognitive state in those final months. I reviewed her bank statements, line by line, looking for irregularities. What I found made me sick. In the 6 months before Mom died, nearly $50,000 had been withdrawn from her savings account. The withdrawals were in cash, always just under the $10,000 threshold that would trigger a bank report. There was no record of what the money was used for. Mom's expenses during that period, the caregivers, the medical equipment, the household bills, were all paid by check and totaled less than half that amount. Linda had been stealing from our mother while she was dying. I drove to the bank and spoke with the manager, a woman named Patricia who had known Mom for 30 years. She pulled the withdrawal records and showed me the signature cards. Linda's name was on the account as a joint holder, added 2 years ago. Your mother came in herself to add her, Patricia said. She seemed a little confused, but she was insistent. She said she wanted Linda to be able to help with bills. Did my mother make these withdrawals herself? Patricia shook her head. Linda came in alone. She had power of attorney. Everything was legal. Legal, but not legitimate. Linda had used Mum's declining cognition to gain access to her accounts, then systematically drained them. The money was probably sitting in a private account somewhere, waiting to be spent on handbags and vacations while I paid for Mum's care out of my own pocket. I thanked Patricia and drove home in a fog of rage. Sarah met me at the door and saw the look on my face. She did not ask what I had found. She just held me while I shook. That night, I made a decision. I would not just challenge the will, I would expose everything. The theft, the forgery, the exploitation of a vulnerable woman by her own daughter. Linda would not walk away from this with a slap on the wrist. She would face consequences. Martin Chen filed the probate challenge on a Thursday morning. By Thursday afternoon, my phone was ringing. Daniel! Linda's voice was ice. What do you think you're doing? I'm honoring our mother's wishes. You're trying to steal my inheritance. Mom wanted me to have the house. She told me so herself. She was in a coma, Linda. She couldn't tell you anything. There was a pause. When she spoke again, her voice had shifted, softer now, almost pleading. Danny, please. We're family. We can work this out between ourselves. There's no need for lawyers and courts. That's not what Mom would have wanted. Mom wanted me to do what's right. That's exactly what I'm doing. You're going to regret this. The softness was gone. I have a notarized document. I have a witness. You have a piece of paper that's 10 years old. Who do you think a judge is going to believe? I guess we'll find out. I hung up the phone. My hands were steady. My heart was not. The injunction came through the following week. The estate was frozen pending resolution of the challenge. Linda could not sell the house, could not access the investments, could not touch a single dollar of what she had tried to steal. I knew she would not take that lying down. What I did not know was how far she was willing to go. The first sign of trouble came on a Monday morning, 2 weeks after the injunction. I was at my office reviewing blueprints for a highway overpass project when my assistant knocked on the door. There's a woman here to see you, she said. She says it's about your mother's estate. I assumed it was someone from Martin Chen's office. Instead, I found a young woman in a dark suit, holding a leather portfolio. She introduced herself as Detective Sergeant Amy Ruiz from the Portland Police Bureau Financial Crimes Division. Mr. Carter, I need to ask you some questions about withdrawals made from your mother's bank account in the months before her death. My stomach dropped. I've already reported those withdrawals to my attorney. My sister made them without proper authorization. Actually, sir, your sister is the one who filed the report. She's claiming that you coerced your mother into giving you access to the account, and that you made the withdrawals yourself. For a moment, I could not speak. The audacity of it took my breath away. Linda had stolen $50,000, and now she was accusing me of stealing it. That's a lie, I said. I was never on that account. I never made any withdrawals. Detective Ruiz's face was professionally neutral. The bank records show the withdrawals were made by someone with power of attorney. Your sister claims that was you. My sister is the one who had power of attorney. She added herself to the account 2 years ago. She claims you forged the documents. I stared at the detective, trying to process the sheer brazenness of Linda's counterattack. She was not just defending herself. She was trying to turn me into the criminal. If she could convince the police that I was the thief, my probate challenge would collapse. No judge would believe a man accused of elder abuse. I have evidence that my sister is lying, I said. My attorney has documentation of her power of attorney, signed by my mother. We have bank records showing Linda made the withdrawals in person. We have medical records proving my mother was incapacitated during the period when the money was taken. Detective Ruiz made a note. We'll need copies of all of that. You'll have them today. After she left, I sat at my desk and tried to slow my breathing. Linda had declared war. She was not just going to fight me in court. She was going to try to destroy me. I called Martin Chen and told him what had happened. He was not surprised. This is a common tactic in contested estates, he said. If she can muddy the waters enough, she hopes you'll give up and settle. Don't let her intimidate you. I won't. But I would be lying if I said I was not frightened. Linda had resources I did not. Her husband Craig's insurance business was successful, and they had money for expensive lawyers and private investigators. More than that, she had a ruthlessness I had never fully understood until now. She was willing to accuse her own brother of crimes she had committed. What else was she willing to do? The answer came 3 days later. I was at home, eating dinner with Sarah, when my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. It was a link to a local news website. I clicked it and felt the blood drain from my face. Local engineer accused of exploiting dying mother. The headline read. The article was a hatchet job. It quoted sources close to the family, claiming that I had isolated my mother in her final months, prevented her from seeing her daughter, and manipulated her into changing her will. It mentioned the police investigation without noting that my sister had filed a false report. It painted me as a greedy son who had betrayed a vulnerable woman. My name was not mentioned directly. I supposed that was for legal protection. But anyone who knew me would recognize the details. The article described my profession, my neighborhood, even the make of my car. Sarah read over my shoulder. Oh my God. Danny, this is defamation. You can sue them. That's what she wants. She wants me to spend money and energy fighting on multiple fronts. She wants me to get overwhelmed and give up. So what do? I looked at the article again, at the lies and the half-truths, and I felt something cold settle in my chest. Linda thought she could break me. She thought I would crumble under the pressure and walk away. She was wrong. The next morning, I drove to the hospice facility where Mum had spent her final weeks. I had visited her there every day, sometimes twice a day, sitting with her even when she did not know who I was. The staff had seen me. They knew the truth. I asked to speak with the director, a woman named Helen Okonkwo, who had been extraordinarily kind during those terrible days. I explained the situation, the false accusations, the need for evidence that would prove my mother's true condition. I remember you, Mr. Carter, Helen said. I remember how devoted you were. Your mother was fortunate to have you. I need documentation, I said. I need statements from the staff about my mother's condition on the date this supposed will was signed. I need proof that she could not have signed anything. Helen nodded slowly. Your mother was deeply unconscious on that date. She had been unresponsive for 5 days. I'll provide a formal statement, and I'll ask the nurses who were on duty to do the same. We keep detailed records. There will be no ambiguity. Thank you, Mr. Carter. She hesitated. I also remember your sister's visits, or rather the lack of them. In the 3 weeks your mother was with us, your sister came twice. Both times she went directly to the administrative office to ask about your mother's accounts and insurance. She never sat with her, not once. I closed my eyes. Even now, even with everything I knew, that detail hurt. Helen's statement arrived the next day, along with statements from 3 nurses. They were clear and damning. Margaret Carter had been in a persistent vegetative state for the final week of her life. She could not have signed a document. She could not have spoken. She could not have expressed any wishes at all. I sent the statements to Detective Ruiz and to Martin Chen. I also sent them to the journalist who had written the hatchet piece, along with a polite note suggesting that she might want to investigate the other side of the story. She did not respond. The article stayed up. But I had the evidence now, and evidence was what mattered. The point of no return came on a Friday afternoon. Martin Chen called me into his office. He had a document spread across his desk, and his expression was grim. "We got the notary's records," he said. "Howard Prescott. He's been in practice for 30 years, generally good reputation. But there are some irregularities." "What kind of irregularities?" 3 formal complaints in the last 5 years, all related to estate documents. One was dismissed, one resulted in a warning, one is still under investigation. But that's not the most interesting part. He slid a piece of paper across the desk. It was a printout from the Oregon Secretary of State's website, a database of notary commissions. "Look at the date of his last renewal." I looked, and I understood. Howard Prescott's notary commission had expired 2 months before he allegedly witnessed my mother's signature on Linda's will. He had not been a legally valid notary at the time of the signing. The document was void. "This is it," I said. "This is proof. It's better than proof. It's disqualification. Even if everything else about Linda's will was legitimate, which we know it wasn't, the notarization alone invalidates it. She doesn't have a leg to stand on." I sat back in my chair. For the first time in weeks, I felt something other than fear and anger. I felt hope. What's the next step? I file a motion to dismiss the contested document based on the invalid notarization. I also report Howard Prescott to the Secretary of State for practicing without a valid commission. And I send a very pointed letter to your sister's attorney, suggesting that their client might want to consider withdrawing her challenge before things get worse. "Do it," I said. Martin smiled. It was not a kind smile. "With pleasure." The motion was filed on a Tuesday. By Wednesday, my phone was ringing off the hook. Linda called 7 times. I did not answer. Her attorney called 3 times. I referred him to Martin. Craig, my brother-in-law, sent a text that was mostly profanity and threats. I saved it as evidence. The formal response came on Thursday. Linda's attorney requested a 2-week extension to review the new evidence. It was a stalling tactic, but Martin advised me to grant it. "We want this to look orderly," he said. "We want the judge to see that we're the reasonable ones." So I waited. I went back to work, tried to focus on my projects, tried to pretend that my life was not in the process of being torn apart. Sarah was a rock, as always, but I could see the strain on her face. The boys called more often, worried about what they were reading online. I assured them I was fine, that the truth would come out, that everything would be okay. I almost believed it. On the 10th day of the extension, I came home from work to find a car I did not recognize parked in my driveway. It was a black Mercedes, expensive and sleek. I knew who it belonged to before I even opened my front door. Linda was sitting in my living room. She stood up when I walked in. She was dressed impeccably, as always, in a tailored jacket and silk blouse. Her makeup was perfect. Her smile was not. "Danny," she said, "we need to talk. How did you get in here?" "Sarah let me in. She's very gracious, your wife. Much more gracious than you've been." I looked around. Sarah was nowhere to be seen. She must have retreated to the bedroom, unwilling to be part of whatever was about to happen. "Say what you came to say, Linda." She moved closer. Her perfume was expensive, suffocating. "I came to make you an offer. Walk away from the probate challenge, and I'll drop the police complaint. We split the estate 50-50, just like Mom's original will said. We both walk away with something, and we don't have to destroy each other. You tried to steal everything. You forged documents, you committed perjury, and now you want to split? I want to be fair. You don't know what fair means." Her face changed. The mask slipped just for a moment, and I saw the calculation underneath. Danny, listen to me. You can't win this. I have resources you don't. I have a notary who will swear to anything I tell him. I have friends in the media who will keep publishing stories about you. How long do you think your reputation can survive? How long before your clients start wondering if they should trust an engineer who exploits his own mother? Your notary wasn't even licensed. The document is invalid. Something flickered in her eyes. She had not expected me to know that. That's a technicality. We can fix it. You can't fix perjury. You can't fix fraud. I can make your life very difficult, Danny. You already have. We stood there, facing each other across the living room where we had played as children, where we had celebrated birthdays and Christmases and graduations. I remembered her as a little girl, bright and curious, always wanting whatever I had. I remembered the moment I realized she would never be satisfied, no matter how much she got. Get out of my house, I said. You're making a mistake. The only mistake I made was trusting you. Her face hardened. The charm disappeared, replaced by something cold and furious. Fine, you want a war? You've got one. I will bury you, Danny. I will take everything you have, and when I'm done, you'll be begging me for the deal I just offered. She walked past me, brushing my shoulder as she went. At the door, she turned back. Mom, I stood. The pretense was over. The gloves were off. Linda had shown me exactly who she was, and now I knew exactly what I was dealing with. That night, I called Martin Chen and told him to proceed with everything. The motion to invalidate the will, the report to the Secretary of State, the request for a formal investigation into Howard Prescott. All of it. She threatened you, Martin said. It was not a question. She did. We can use that. If she contacts you again, record the conversation. Oregon is a one-party consent state. You can record any conversation you're a part of without the other person's knowledge. I'll do that. And Danny, take a few days off. You've been running hard for weeks. The filings are done, the evidence is submitted, the wheels are in motion. There's nothing more you can do right now except wait. Get some rest. He was right. I was exhausted, physically and emotionally. I had barely slept since the funeral, barely eaten. I was running on adrenaline and anger, and it was not sustainable. I took his advice. I told my office I would be out until Monday. Sarah and I drove to the coast, to a little bed and breakfast we had visited on our honeymoon. We walked on the beach, ate fresh seafood, watched the sunset over the Pacific. We did not talk about Linda or the estate or any of it. We just existed together, in the present moment. It was exactly what I needed. On Sunday evening, driving home through the twilight, I felt something I had not felt in weeks. Peace. Whatever happened next, I had done the right thing. I had honored my mother's wishes. I had stood up to injustice. I had refused to be intimidated. Linda could threaten and manipulate and scheme all she wanted. She could not take that away from me. The weeks that followed were quiet. Too quiet. Linda did not call. Her attorney did not call. There were no more news articles, no more texts from Craig. The police investigation seemed to have stalled. Detective Ruiz left a voicemail saying they were reviewing the evidence I had submitted, but there was no timeline for a resolution. I went back to work. I finished the highway overpass project, started on a new one. I had dinner with Sarah every night, called the boys on weekends, mowed the lawn, and fixed the leaky faucet in the guest bathroom. Normal life, or an approximation of it. But underneath the normalcy, I felt the tension. Linda was planning something. She was regrouping, gathering her forces, waiting for the right moment to strike. I knew her too well to believe she had given up. The temptation came on a Thursday afternoon. I was at my desk when my assistant buzzed in. There's a Craig Morrison on the phone. He says it's urgent. Craig, Linda's husband. The last time I had heard from him was that profane text message. I considered not taking the call, but curiosity won out. Craig, Daniel, I want to help you. I waited. Look, I know things have gotten out of hand. Linda is... She's not herself right now. The The stress of losing your mother, the legal fight, it's made her a little crazy, but that doesn't mean we can't find a solution. I'm listening. I have a proposal. You drop the challenge, we drop the police complaint, and we give you $100,000. Cash, no taxes, no records. You walk away clean, we walk away clean, and nobody has to know what really happened. $100,000. It was more than my share of the estate would have been under Mum's true will. It was enough to pay off what remained of my mortgage, to start a college fund for potential grandchildren, to take Sarah on that trip to Italy she had always wanted. And all I had to do was let Linda get away with fraud. That's an interesting offer, I said. It's a generous offer. More than generous, considering the circumstances. What circumstances would those be? Daniel, come on. You know how this is going to end. Linda has resources. She has connections. She has a notary who will swear he was licensed, that the database was wrong. She can drag this out for years, and by the time it's over, you'll have spent more on legal fees than the estate is worth. Take the money. It's the smart move. I looked out the window of my office. The sun was shining. People were walking on the sidewalk below, going about their lives, oblivious to the moral calculations happening above their heads. Let me think about it, I said. Don't think too long. This offer expires in 48 hours. He hung up. I sat there for a long time, turning the offer over in my mind. The money was tempting. I could not deny that. And Craig was right about one thing. Linda could drag this out. She could make my life miserable for years. Was it worth it? Was the principal worth the cost? Then I thought I could not. Interesting. That suggests they're worried. I'm not taking it. I didn't think you would. But it's good that you told me. It's evidence of consciousness of guilt. They know their case is weak, and they're trying to buy their way out. What's our status? Forgery is a crime, Daniel. So is perjury, so is elder abuse, so is filing a false police report. If the DA decides to pursue charges, your sister could be looking at prison time. Prison. My sister in prison. I tried to imagine it and could not, but then I had tried to imagine her forging our mother's will, and that had happened. Let them. I'm not taking your offer. There was a long silence. You're making a mistake. So I've been told. Daniel, I'm trying to help you here. Linda is not going to back down. She's going to fight this with everything she has. You don't want her as an enemy. She made herself my enemy the day she forged our mother's signature. You can't prove that. He hung up. That weekend I visited Mom's grave. It was the first time I had been there since the funeral. The headstone was simple, just her name and dates, the way she wanted it. I stood there in the spring sunshine and talked to her, even though I knew she could not hear. I'm doing what you asked, I said. It's hard, but I'm doing it. I hope you'd be proud. A breeze stirred the flowers someone had left on the grave. Probably one of her friends from the hospital, still remembering. I miss you, Mom. I wish you were here to tell me I'm doing the right thing. I wish you were here to tell me it's going to be okay. But she was not here. She was gone, and I was alone with her legacy. The house she had worked so hard to buy, the savings she had accumulated dollar by dollar, the memory of her kindness, her sacrifice, her love. I wouldn't. How are you doing? She asked. Better, I said. I'm ready for whatever comes next. She smiled. I was in my garage on a Saturday morning, changing the oil in my truck, when a shadow fell across the driveway. I looked up and saw her standing there, alone this time, no Craig or lawyers in tow. She was wearing jeans and a simple blouse, no makeup, her hair pulled back in a ponytail. She looked younger, more vulnerable. I knew it was deliberate. Can we talk? She asked. I wiped my hands on a rag. About what? About everything. About Mom. About us. She took a step forward. Danny, I've been doing a lot of thinking. I've been seeing a therapist, actually. She's helped me realize some things. What kind of things? That I was wrong. About the will, about the money, about all of it. Her eyes were wet. I was so scared when Mom died. Scared of losing her, scared of being alone, scared of not having anything to hold on to. I made terrible decisions. I hurt you. I hurt Mom's memory. I hurt myself. And I'm sorry. It was a good performance. If I did not know her so well, I might have believed it. What do you want, Linda? I want us to be family again. I want to drop all the legal stuff and just divide the estate the way Mom originally intended. 50-50, like her real will says. She stepped closer, reaching out to touch my arm. We can put this behind us, Danny. We can heal. And the forgery? And the theft from Mom's accounts? And the false police report? Her face flickered. Just for an instant, the mask slipped. Those were mistakes. I was desperate. I wasn't thinking clearly. But we can make it right. We can tell the lawyers to stand down. We can tell the DA we've reconciled. Nobody has to go to prison. Nobody has to be ruined. We just move on. I looked at her hand on my arm. The perfectly manicured nails, the expensive watch on her wrist. Linda, do you remember when we were kids and you broke Mom's favorite vase, the blue one from Grandma? She blinked. What? You were throwing a ball in the house and you knocked it off the shelf. When Mom asked what happened, you said I did it. You stood there and watched me get punished for something you did. Danny, that was 30 years ago. We were children. You never apologized. You never admitted what you did. And every time something went wrong after that, it was the same. Someone else's fault, never yours. I removed her hand from my arm. You're not here to reconcile. You're here because you're losing, and you're trying to manipulate me into letting you off the hook. The tears dried up instantly. The vulnerability vanished. In its place was the Linda I had seen in my living room, cold and hard and calculating. You think you're so righteous, she said. You think you're the good son, the one who did everything right. But you're just as greedy as anyone else. You want the money, and you're using Mom's memory to justify taking it. I want justice. There's a difference. Justice. She laughed, a sharp, brittle sound. There's no such thing as justice, Danny. There's only winning and losing, and I don't lose. Then I guess we'll see what the judge thinks. Her eyes went flat. The pretense was over, completely and finally. You're going to regret this, she said. When this is over, you won't have a sister. You won't have a family. You'll have a house and some money and nothing else. I'll have the truth. The truth. She spat the word. The truth is that Mom should have left everything to me. I was the one who escaped this place, who made something of myself. You just stayed here and played handyman and waited for her to die so you could get your hands on her money. If anyone's a thief, it's you. She was trying to hurt me. She was reaching for the sharpest knife she had, and she was trying to plunge it into my heart. But I had expected this. I had prepared for it. You should go, Linda. I'm not finished. Yes, you are. She stared at me for a long moment. I could see the rage building, could see her searching for something else to throw at me. But there was nothing left. She had played all her cards, and they had not worked. Fine, she said. Have it your way. But remember this conversation, Danny. Remember that I tried to make peace. Remember that you're the one who chose war. She turned and walked away. I watched her get into her Mercedes and drive off, and I felt something I had not expected. Sadness, not for what I was losing. I had lost my sister long ago, if I ever really had her. But for what could have been. For the family we might have had if she had been different, or I had been different, or the world had been kinder to both of us. I went inside and found Sarah at the kitchen table, listening. Are you okay? She asked. I will be. She stood up and wrapped her arms around me. I held her tight, drawing strength from her warmth, her steadiness, her love. It's almost over, she said. I know. But it did not feel over. It felt like the storm was still gathering, and the worst was yet to come. That night, I dreamed of Mom. She was young, the way I remembered her from childhood, strong and beautiful and whole. She was standing in her kitchen, making pancakes, and she turned to me with a smile. "You're doing good, Danny," she said. "I'm proud of you." I woke up with tears on my face. The hearing was set for 10 o'clock on a Wednesday morning. I arrived at the courthouse at 9:30, wearing my best suit, carrying a briefcase full of documents I had already given to Martin, but could not bear to leave behind. Sarah wanted to come with me, but I asked her to wait at home. I needed to do this alone. Martin was waiting in the hallway outside the courtroom. He looked calm, confident, the way good lawyers always look before battle. He shook my hand and gave me a brief overview of what to expect. "The judge will hear arguments from both sides and make a ruling on the validity of your sister's will. Based on the evidence, I expect the ruling to go our way. But be prepared for anything. I'm prepared. There's something else you should know. The DA filed charges this morning." "Charges?" "Against your sister and Howard Prescott. Forgery, perjury, conspiracy to commit fraud. They'll be arraigned later this week. I absorbed this. Criminal charges, my sister facing trial. It was what I had wanted, what I had worked for. Why did it feel so hollow?" The courtroom was smaller than I expected, less dramatic. No jury box, no gallery of spectators, just the judge's bench, 2 tables for the opposing parties, and a few rows of seats. Linda was already there, sitting with her attorney, a slick man in an expensive suit whose name I had never bothered to learn. She did not look at me as I entered. Howard Prescott was not there. I learned later that he was in the process of retaining his own counsel, preparing to fight the criminal charges. His absence spoke volumes. The judge entered, and we rose. Her name was Eleanor Vasquez, and she was known for efficiency and intolerance of nonsense. Martin said she was a good draw for us. "This is a hearing on the matter of the estate of Margaret Elizabeth Carter," Judge Vasquez said. "We are here to determine the validity of 2 competing testamentary documents. Counsel, please proceed." Linda's attorney went first. He laid out his case with smooth confidence, describing a deathbed reconciliation, a daughter's love, a mother's last wish. He presented the contested will and the notarized signature. He described Howard Prescott as a respected professional who had witnessed countless documents over 30 years. He asked the court to honor the deceased's final intentions. It was a good performance. If I did not know the truth, I might have been swayed. Then Martin stood up. He did not raise his voice. He did not use dramatic gestures. He simply laid out the facts, one by one, like bricks in a wall. Margaret Carter was in a coma on the date the contested will was allegedly signed. Medical records confirmed this. Statements from hospice staff confirmed this. She could not have signed anything. Howard Prescott's notary commission was expired at the time of the notarization. Secretary of State records confirmed this. The document was therefore invalid on its face, regardless of any other considerations. Furthermore, there was evidence of systematic financial exploitation in the months before Margaret Carter's death. Bank records showed $50,000 in withdrawals made by Linda Morrison under a power of attorney that she had obtained when her mother was already suffering from cognitive decline. Finally, there was the matter of the original will, properly executed 10 years earlier, dividing the estate equally between the 2 children. This was Margaret Carter's true intention, expressed when she was of sound mind and clear judgment. This was the document that should govern the disposition of her estate. Martin presented each piece of evidence as he spoke. Medical records, bank statements, the Secretary of State database, Mom's letter explaining her fears and her wishes. By the time he finished, the wall was complete and unassailable. Linda's attorney tried to rebut. He claimed the medical records were incomplete, the bank withdrawals legitimate, the notary database inaccurate. But his words sounded hollow, and I could see Judge Vasquez's skepticism growing with every sentence. When he finished, the judge looked at both tables. "Does the respondent wish to present any additional evidence or testimony?" Linda's attorney glanced at his client. Linda was staring straight ahead, her face rigid. She did not respond. "No, Your Honor." "Very well." Judge Vasquez shuffled the papers in front of her. "Based on the evidence presented, I find that the document purporting to be the last will and testament of Margaret Elizabeth Carter, dated 6 days before her death, is invalid. The notarization was performed by an individual whose commission had expired, rendering the document unenforceable under Oregon law. Furthermore, the medical evidence establishes that the decedent was in a vegetative state on the date of the alleged signing and could not have executed any legal document. She looked at Linda. The court notes that criminal charges have been filed in relation to this matter. Those proceedings are separate from this hearing, but the evidence presented here may be relevant. Linda still did not move. Her face was a mask. The court therefore rules that the estate of Margaret Elizabeth Carter shall be distributed according to her valid will, dated 10 years prior to her death, which divides her assets equally between her 2 children. Judge Vasquez closed the file. This hearing is concluded. The gavel fell. For a moment, no one moved. Then Linda stood up abruptly, knocking her chair back, and walked out of the courtroom without looking at anyone. Her attorney hurried after her. I sat there, letting the reality sink in. It was over. I had won. Martin put a hand on my shoulder. "Congratulations," he said. "You did the right thing, and the system worked." "Thank you," I said, "for everything." I walked out of the courthouse into the spring sunshine. Sarah was waiting on the steps. She had come after all, unable to stay away. I fell into her arms, and for the first time in months I let myself cry. "You did it," she said. "We did it." But even in that moment of triumph, I felt the weight of what I had lost. A sister, a family, the illusion that the people I loved would never betray me. Some victories come at a cost. This one came at a price I was still learning to measure. The aftermath unfolded over the following weeks. Linda and Howard Prescott were arraigned on multiple felony charges. The evidence was overwhelming, and their attorneys immediately began negotiating plea deals. Prescott, facing the loss of his career and possible prison time, agreed to testify against Linda in exchange for reduced charges. He confirmed everything: the forged signature, the bribe Linda had paid him, the lies they had coordinated. Linda's attorney tried to mount a defense, but the case collapsed around her. Faced with Prescott's testimony and the mountain of documentation I had assembled, she accepted a plea bargain: guilty to forgery and elder abuse, 18 months in state prison, 5 years probation, full restitution of the stolen funds. I was not in the courtroom for her sentencing. I could not bring myself to watch. But I heard about it later. How she stood before the judge in an orange jumpsuit, her perfect hair unwashed, her expensive manicure chipped and broken. How she refused to apologize, maintaining to the end that she had only taken what was rightfully hers. How the judge called her actions a profound betrayal of family trust and imposed the maximum sentence under the plea agreement. She was taken away in handcuffs. Craig, her husband, was not there. I learned later that he had filed for divorce while she was awaiting trial, claiming he had known nothing of her crimes. I did not believe him, but I also did not care enough to pursue it. Mum's estate was settled in accordance with her true will. The house was sold. Neither Linda nor I wanted to live there, and splitting it any other way would have been impractical. The investments were divided. After legal fees and taxes, I received approximately $250,000. It was more than I expected, more than I needed. Sarah and I paid off our mortgage. We set up college funds for our grandchildren when they arrived. We donated $50,000 to the hospice facility where Mum had spent her final weeks, in her name, in her memory. And I took Sarah to Italy, finally. We spent 2 weeks wandering through Florence and Rome and the Amalfi Coast, eating too much pasta, drinking too much wine, watching the sunset over the Mediterranean. We did not talk about Linda or the trial or any of it. We just existed together in a world that was briefly free of ugliness, but the ugliness found us when we returned. The news stories had done their damage. My reputation was tarnished despite my vindication. Some clients had moved on during my absence, unwilling to work with an engineer who had been publicly accused of exploiting his mother. My firm lost 3 contracts that I had been counting on. For a while I considered retiring. I was old enough, and we had the money. But I had spent 30 years building something, and I was not ready to let it go because of Linda's lies. I decided to rebuild instead. 1 client at a time, 1 project at a time. It would take years, but I had years left, I hoped. As for Linda, she served her full sentence. There was no early release for good behavior, no commutation for family connections. She was an inmate at Coffee Creek Correctional Facility for 18 months, wearing a uniform instead of designer clothes, eating cafeteria food instead of Seattle's finest restaurants. I did not visit her. She did not write. When she was released, she moved to California. Craig had taken everything in the divorce, the house, the cars, the investments. She was 50 years old, a convicted felon, starting over with nothing. I heard through mutual acquaintances that she was working as a clerk in a department store, living in a studio apartment, attending mandatory counseling sessions. I did not know if she was happy, and I did not ask. Sometimes, late at night, I wondered if I should reach out. She was still my sister, still the girl I had grown up with, still someone I had loved once. But then I remembered the look on her face when she told me she would bury me. I remembered the forged signature, the stolen money, the lies. I remembered Mom's letter, written 10 years before she died, warning me of what was coming. Some betrayals are too deep to forgive. Some bridges once burned cannot be rebuilt. I did not reach out. I let her go, and slowly, gradually, life returned to normal. I finished the new project and started another. The grandchildren arrived, a boy and a girl, and they filled our house with noise and chaos and joy. Sarah's garden flourished. The roof needed replacing, and I did it myself, climbing up on a ladder at 53 years old and feeling every minute of it. Mum's grave became a regular stop for me. Once a month, rain or shine. I would stand there and tell her what was happening in my life, what her great-grandchildren were learning, how the trailblazers were doing. I would tell her I missed her. I would tell her I hoped she was proud, and and somewhere, somehow, I believed she heard me. 5 years passed. The house I shared with Sarah became a different kind of home. Our sons visited with their families for holidays and summer vacations, filling the rooms with the sound of running feet and laughter that reached every corner. We converted the basement into a play area for the grandchildren, with toys and books and a small indoor slide that Sarah found at an estate sale. Every Sunday we had family dinners at our table, just as I had once had dinners at Mom's table. The tradition continued, changed but unbroken. My firm recovered, eventually. The clients who had left came back, most of them, once the truth became clear. I took on a partner, a younger engineer named Marcus, who had the energy I no longer possessed, and together we built the business larger than it had ever been. I worked less than I used to, 3 days a week instead of 5, focusing on the projects I cared about and letting Marcus handle the rest. It was enough. Sarah and I traveled. Italy had been just the beginning. We went to Spain and Portugal and Greece, to Japan and Australia and New Zealand. We went to Alaska and saw the Northern Lights. We went to Hawaii and sat on the beach and did absolutely nothing, which turned out to be exactly what I needed. We were healthy, we were happy, we were together. As for Linda, the years were not kind. She never rebuilt. The California job lasted 6 months before she was let go for reasons that were never clear. She drifted south to San Diego, then to Arizona, then to Nevada. She worked retail, food service, housekeeping, whatever she could find that did not require a background check. She moved from apartment to apartment, always one step ahead of eviction. Her health declined. The stress and the poverty took their toll. She developed diabetes, then heart problems. She had no insurance, so she went to emergency rooms and charity clinics and lived with the pain the rest of the time. The woman who had once worn designer suits and driven a Mercedes now relied on food stamps and Medicaid. I learned all of this secondhand through fragments of information that reached me over the years. A cousin who had seen her in Las Vegas, a former colleague of Craig's who had heard rumors, a news story about a fraud case in Arizona that mentioned her name in a list of prior convictions. She never contacted me. I never contacted her. We existed on separate planes, our lives running parallel but never intersecting. Then, last spring, I received a phone call. It was from a hospital in Phoenix. Linda had suffered a massive stroke. She was unconscious, not expected to recover. I was listed as her next of kin. I flew to Arizona that same day. The hospital was large and anonymous, the kind of place where people go to die. Linda was in the intensive care unit, surrounded by machines that breathed for her and monitored her vital signs. She looked small in the bed, shrunken, nothing like the formidable woman who had threatened to destroy me. Her hair was grey and thin, her skin was sallow. Her hands, once so perfectly manicured, were rough and calloused. I sat with her for 3 days. I did not know why I had come. She would not have done the same for me, I was certain of that. But something had pulled me there, some obligation I could not name, some connection that had survived everything. On the 3rd day she died. I was alone with her when it happened. The machines slowed, then stopped, and the room went quiet. I sat there in the silence and looked at my sister, and I felt something I had not expected. Grief, not for the person she had become, but for the person she might have been. For the sister I had wished for and never had. For the family that was now gone forever. I arranged the funeral. It was simple, just a graveside service at a cemetery in Phoenix. No one came except me and the minister. Linda had no friends, no community, no one who cared enough to say goodbye. I stood at the grave and thought about the arc of her life. The ambition, the jealousy, the crimes, the punishment, the years of suffering that followed. Was it justice? Was it karma? Or was it just the inevitable result of choices made long ago, consequences that could not be escaped? I did not know. I would never know. But I knew this. I had tried to do what was right, and it had cost me my sister. If I had let her win, if I had taken the money and walked away, she might still be alive. She might have been happy, or at least comfortable. She might have avoided the spiral that destroyed her. Would that have been better? Would her happiness have been worth my complicity in her crimes? I stood at the grave for a long time, turning the question over in my mind. But there was no answer. There was only the choice I had made, and the life I had lived because of it. I flew. You did the right thing, she said. You honored your mother. You stood up for the truth. Whatever happened to Linda, she did it to herself. I knew she was right. But that night, lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, I wondered. So that's my story. A mother who saw trouble coming, a sister who chose greed over family, a battle I never wanted but could not walk away from. Looking back, would I do it differently? Would I take the money, keep the peace, let the lies stand? No, I would make the same choice, every time, because some things matter more than money, more than comfort, more than the illusion of family harmony. Truth matters, justice matters, honoring the people who loved us and trusted us, that matters most of all. But I understand it's not simple. I understand the cost. What would you have done? When the document came out, when the truth became clear, would you have fought, or would you have walked away? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And if this story resonated with you, there are others on my channel. Other families, other betrayals, other choices that seemed impossible until they became inevitable. Subscribe if you want to hear more. Thanks for listening. Take care of the people who matter to you, because in the end, that's all we really have.